Burmese pythons have devastated native wildlife in the Everglades.
In the murky depths of Florida's wetlands, surveillance equipment is documenting something that has scientists completely stunned. For years, we've been focused on one story: the takeover, the invasion of massive pythons consuming everything in their path. But new recordings reveal something entirely different. They show a hidden development that nobody predicted, and a controversial solution that became the world's biggest joke. The snakes remain, but the narrative has shifted dramatically. What researchers have uncovered in the Everglades goes beyond ecological disaster. It's a startling revelation that transforms our entire understanding of this damaged ecosystem. Before the devastation began, the Florida Everglades represented nature's perfection. This wasn't simply wetland territory. It was an immense, gradually flowing grassland river spanning more than 1.5 million acres. This ancient, intricate ecosystem, a subtropical wilderness, thrived with extraordinary biodiversity. Its economic significance was calculated at over $31.5 billion annually. Its importance extended far beyond wildlife habitat. It served as critical flood control infrastructure and supplied clean water to millions throughout South Florida. Everything existed in extraordinary harmony. Massive colonies of wading birds, herons, egrets, and ibises would blanket the skies. Their numbers were so immense, they resembled moving clouds. Raccoons, opossums, and marsh rabbits darted through the sawgrass, while bobcats and native foxes prowled the elevated tree islands known as hammocks. This was among America's final untouched wildernesses, and absolutely no one, not even leading experts, believed it could collapse so rapidly. The catastrophe didn't announce itself loudly. It crept in quietly during a violent storm. In August 1992, Hurricane Andrew, a devastating Category 5 hurricane, ravaged southern Florida. Wind speeds exceeded 165 miles per hour. It obliterated entire communities. During this destruction, it destroyed a reptile breeding operation near Miami. When the storm subsided, an undetermined number of Burmese pythons, a species from Southeast Asia, had escaped into the surrounding wetlands. But here's the critical detail. That hurricane wasn't the sole catalyst. Simultaneously, another disaster was gradually building. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Burmese pythons became fashionable exotic pets. People purchased them as tiny $10 hatchlings, considering them fascinating. But here's the reality. Those fascinating hatchlings don't remain small. They expand rapidly and relentlessly. A snake that begins palm-sized transforms into a 10-foot, 50-pound predator within just a few years. And their growth doesn't stop there. They can exceed 20 feet in length and surpass 200 pounds, powerful enough to overpower a mature deer. Overwhelmed owners, now responsible for a massive, dangerous animal, did what seemed logical at the time. They traveled to the Everglades boundary and released them. They believed they were granting freedom. Instead, they were igniting an ecological catastrophe waiting to detonate. This is the conventional narrative everyone accepts. But consider this alternative. What if the pet owner explanation is merely the convenient story? What if the hurricane didn't just damage one facility, but exposed something much larger? What if there was a massive, unregistered breeding operation that suddenly released thousands of snakes simultaneously? Some scientists have quietly suggested that the invasion's explosive speed contradicts the theory of scattered pet releases. It's a puzzle that remains unsolved. For years, nobody considered it significant. A few occasional sightings seemed unremarkable, but the pythons weren't merely surviving. They were flourishing spectacularly. The Everglades created ideal conditions for them. It was a python utopia. The temperature, the moisture, the expansive shallow waters, and an unlimited supply of native prey. Animals with absolutely no evolutionary defenses. They had never encountered anything remotely similar to this predator. The Burmese python is evolutionary perfection. They excel at camouflage, disappearing completely into vegetation. They can remain submerged for more than 30 minutes. And the most remarkable feature, They possess thermal sensing pits along their jaws. They can literally detect the body heat of warm-blooded creatures in complete darkness. A raccoon has zero chance of escape. And then there's reproduction. The breeding capacity is staggering. A single female can produce clutches approaching 100 eggs. Without natural predators controlling their numbers, their population exploded exponentially. Today, scientists estimate between 100,000 and over 300,000 pythons throughout South Florida. And the ecosystem that once teemed with life is now falling eerily quiet. The statistics are so extreme they seem impossible. A groundbreaking 2012 study exposed the devastating reality. In the most severely impacted Everglades regions, raccoon populations have declined by 99.3%. Opossums have decreased 98.9%, and bobcats have fallen 87.5%. Consider that magnitude. Not 10% reduction, not 50%, 99% vanished, eliminated. What most people fail to grasp is the experience itself. Biologists and trackers who've worked the Everglades for decades describe the eerie silence. They recall driving the loop roads, constantly stopping for raccoons or turtles crossing. Now they travel miles, even days, without seeing anything. The small mammals that formed the ecosystem's entire foundation have been consumed wholesale. The invaders had discovered paradise, and they were devouring it completely. The equilibrium that sustained the Everglades for millennia wasn't merely disrupted, it was obliterated. And when officials finally acknowledged the crisis, they realized they were battling a phantom. The swamp had gone silent, but the pythons hadn't arrived alone. As the Everglades' silence became overwhelming, Florida officials finally mobilized. But their initial response resembled something from a low-budget reality show. In 2013, authorities launched the Florida Python Challenge. It was partially publicity campaign, partially desperate experiment. They invited the general public, essentially anyone courageous or reckless enough, to venture into the swamp and capture the giant invaders. They offered monetary rewards, including a $10,000 grand prize for whoever removed the most snakes. It became a yearly spectacle. By 2024, over 800 participants from across the nation and even Canada arrived. They brought traps, snake hooks, and considerable nerve, attempting to accomplish what decades of policy couldn't achieve. That year, they captured 195 Burmese pythons. The media coverage was excellent. The photographs were impressive. It seemed like progress. But here's the reality. Let's examine the numbers. They removed 195 snakes. A year later, in 2025, they achieved a new record, 294 snakes. This sounds significant, correct? Not really. Let's assume the most conservative estimate. 100,000 pythons exist in the wild. Removing 294 represents less than 0.3% of the population. If the actual number approaches 300,000, the impact becomes statistically meaningless. It's equivalent to attempting to drain an ocean with a teaspoon while the tide rises. The Everglades wasn't recovering. It was merely serving as a hunting competition backdrop. And the pythons were reproducing faster than removal efforts could match. So the state intensified their approach. They hired professionals. The South Florida Water Management District recruited 24 elite salaried hunters. These weren't weekend hobbyists. These were dedicated python trackers, paid hourly to patrol the levees and swamps continuously, year-round. Since 2017, these contractors have removed thousands of pythons. Combined with all other initiatives, state, federal, and private, over 23,000 pythons have been extracted from the wild. It sounds remarkable. It is remarkable. But even that enormous number, representing years of committed effort, likely constitutes less than 5% of the total population. For every single snake they locate, 20 more hatch, concealed in the endless sawgrass. Frustrated, Florida embraced high-tech solutions. If ground searches proved ineffective, they'd search from above. They deployed drones equipped with high-resolution thermal imaging, believing they could detect the snake's heat signatures from the air. But a problem emerged. The Everglades is hot, the ground is hot, the water is hot. And pythons are cold-blooded. They masterfully regulate their body temperature to blend with their environment. To thermal imaging, a resting python resembles a warm rock or mud patch. Additionally, the dense tree and mangrove canopy makes spotting anything nearly impossible. The drones failed completely. Then they attempted robotic rabbits. Engineers designed artificial rabbits that emitted heat and produced sounds, hoping to lure pythons into ambushes. It failed. Pythons are ambush predators. They wait motionlessly for genuine prey to approach. They showed no interest in noisy, mechanical decoys. The most promising sounding concept involved using scout snakes, also called Judas snakes. This approach was ingenious. Researchers would capture a large male python, surgically implant a miniature radio transmitter, and release it back during breeding season. The male, driven by instinct, would theoretically lead them directly to a large, egg-laden female. This program has produced results. It has facilitated removing some of the largest, most productive breeding females. But it's extraordinarily slow, it's extraordinarily expensive, and it represents incremental progress in a conflict requiring massive gains. And here's the most intriguing theory. What if the snakes possess exceptional intelligence? The hunters and biologists working daily mention it repeatedly. They describe it as uncanny. The snakes seem aware of trap locations. They avoid levees where hunters patrol. The Judas snakes sometimes lead researchers on bizarre circular pursuits for months, almost as if they're aware of being tracked. Is it possible that an apex predator, introduced to a new environment without threats, can develop enhanced intelligence, a heightened cunning? It's a chilling possibility. The technology was failing. The hunters were overwhelmed. The frustration was palpable. Years of effort, billions in funding, and countless failed experiments all indicated the same sobering conclusion. The pythons had prevailed. Scientists began acknowledging it publicly. Complete eradication is impossible. The best achievable outcome is population control. These predators had claimed the Everglades as their domain, and no amount of human technology could reclaim it. But the genuine threat wasn't the visible enemy. This is where the narrative, and the actual aftermath, takes a dark, unexpected direction. What if Florida's greatest problem wasn't the 20-foot python everyone was pursuing, but something microscopic that nobody even knew existed? Deep in the Everglades, a silent passenger arrived with the invaders. It was an invisible parasite, a terrible gift from the pythons, and it's now rewriting Florida's ecological narrative in the most horrifying way. Its name is Raccoons orientalis. It's commonly known as the snake lungworm. Scientists first discovered this threat during autopsies of native Florida snakes. They were finding native species, garter snakes, pygmy rattlesnakes, water snakes, that were emaciated. They were weakened, struggling to breathe. When examined internally, they found a nightmare. Their lungs and airways were congested with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of tiny, writhing worms. They quickly identified the origin. This lungworm originates from Asia, the native habitat of the Burmese python. Over millennia, the pythons and this parasite co-evolved. The pythons can harbor the lungworm, but it rarely causes them significant harm. They're adapted to it. They possess defenses. But Florida's native snakes have absolutely no natural resistance. It's a completely foreign, alien enemy. And here's how this new plague propagates. The life cycle is horrifyingly efficient. First, an infected python defecates in the swamp. Second, those droppings contain the lungworm's eggs. Third, cockroaches and other insects consume the waste and the eggs hatch internally. Fourth, lizards and frogs consume those infected insects. Fifth, finally, a native Florida snake consumes that infected frog or lizard. Once inside the snake's digestive system, the larvae begin their deadly journey. They don't remain in the stomach. They penetrate the stomach wall and migrate directly to the lungs. There they mature. They feed on blood and tissue, and they reproduce. They obstruct the snake's airways until breathing becomes impossible. For many native snakes, this infection is a brutal, prolonged death. They become too weakened to hunt. They slowly starve while simultaneously suffocating. Researchers have discovered native snakes with severe pneumonia and open, bleeding wounds in their lungs. In some of the most extreme cases, they found snakes with dozens of these worms literally emerging from their mouths as they gasped their final breaths. This is the genuine, unexpected aftermath. The pythons were the initial assault. They eliminated the mammals. This parasite is the secondary assault, and it's targeting the native reptiles. The real shock came when scientists discovered how extensively the lungworm had already spread. It's no longer confined to the Everglades. At least 18 different native snake species in Florida have tested positive for infection. The parasite's reach now extends through dozens of counties. Some reports indicate it's reached as far north as Jacksonville and is gradually creeping toward the Panhandle. And here's the part that terrifies scientists. The pythons may have introduced this, but the lungworm no longer requires them. It has successfully transferred hosts. It has established itself in native populations and is now spreading independently, transmitting from native snake to native snake. So here's the astonishing reality. Even if, by some miracle, every single Burmese python was eliminated from Florida tomorrow, the lungworm would persist. It is established, it is alive, and it is thriving. When native snakes, a crucial component of the food web, begin disappearing, the equilibrium collapses repeatedly. Rodents and other pests multiply exponentially. Larger predators that prey on snakes, like hawks and eagles, lose their food source. Now here's where the speculative theories emerge. First, is this parasite mutating? It already jumped from an Asian host to dozens of North American hosts. What prevents it from jumping again? This leads to the most terrifying question. Could it transfer to mammals or even humans? Researchers claim it's highly unlikely, but here's the complication. They didn't anticipate it could jump from pythons to native garter snakes either, but it did. What happens if a stray dog consumes an infected frog? What happens to a hunter who handles an infected snake? Currently, they say we're safe. But in a world where this organism is adapting constantly, safe is a very confident word. There is, however, one very peculiar twist. The Florida cottonmouth, a native pit viper, appears highly resistant to the parasite. Nobody understands why. Is it something in their genetics, their diet? This mystery has its own theory. What if the cottonmouth is the solution? What if its biology holds the secret to an anti-parasitic treatment, a cure? What began as combat against a giant, visible monster has transformed into warfare against an invisible, microscopic one. There is no cure available, there is no treatment protocol, and there is no method to halt it. A monster they couldn't see was eliminating the survivors. Florida was out of alternatives, so they pursued a strategy so outrageous the entire world burst into laughter. With the python invasion completely uncontrollable and a new invisible parasitic plague spreading rapidly, Florida was beyond desperate. The state had become an international joke, the ecosystem was critically damaged, and that's when officials announced the strategy. When the announcement broke, it sounded like satire. It sounded like something from a late-night comedy segment or a Florida Man headline. Florida officials announced they were releasing hundreds of additional snakes into the wild to help combat the invasive python crisis. The world absolutely exploded. Social media erupted. Doesn't Florida have enough snakes already? Fighting snakes with more snakes. What could possibly go wrong? The ridicule was immediate. People instantly compared it to history's greatest ecological disasters. They referenced the cane toads, released in Australia during the 1930s to control beetles. The toads ignored the beetles, multiplied into billions, and became a toxic plague still devastating Australia's wildlife. They referenced the mongooses. In the 1880s, Mongooses were introduced to Hawaii to control rats in sugarcane plantations. But here's the problem. The rats are nocturnal, while mongooses are active during daylight. They rarely encountered each other. So the mongooses sought alternative food sources and ended up decimating Hawaii's native ground-nesting birds. This, everyone screamed, was the identical mistake. Another instance of humans attempting to play God and making everything exponentially worse. News outlets published headlines making it sound like bad science fiction. Anxious residents wondered if their pets and children were at risk. To the average person, it felt ridiculous. A strategy destined to fail before implementation. But here's the reality. This wasn't a reckless Florida idea, and this wasn't just any snake. Behind the laughter and headlines, scientists had been quietly working for decades on a desperate, brilliant strategy. The snake they were releasing was the eastern indigo snake, and it wasn't an invader. It was the rightful monarch returning to reclaim its territory. The eastern indigo snake is known as the emperor of the forest, and for good reason. It is the longest native snake in all of North America, a powerful, non-venomous predator that can reach up to 9 feet long. Its scales are a stunning iridescent blue-black that shimmer in sunlight with a patch of reddish-orange coral coloring under its chin. But its beauty isn't what makes it exceptional. Its diet is what makes it legendary. The eastern indigo is what's known as ophiophagus. That means it consumes other snakes, and remarkably, it is completely immune to the venom of North America's pit vipers, rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, copperheads. The indigo consumes them all. It doesn't constrict its prey. It simply pins them with its powerful jaws and swallows them alive, completely unbothered by the struggle. It is essentially the forest floor's apex predator. Its kingdom, however, used to be expansive, stretching from South Carolina through Georgia and Florida and west to Mississippi. But that kingdom collapsed. The indigo snake's decline is tied to 2 factors: longleaf pine forests and gopher tortoises. First, the forests. The snake thrived in the ancient longleaf pine ecosystem, a habitat that once covered nearly 90 million acres of the southeast. Today, because of logging, development, and fire suppression, nearly 97% of that original forest has vanished. Second, the tortoise. The eastern indigo snake doesn't excavate its own burrows. It relies almost entirely on the deep, sandy burrows created by the gopher tortoise. These burrows are like underground complexes, providing shelter from fire and cold. Over 350 other species also depend on these burrows. The gopher tortoise is what's called a keystone species. The entire ecosystem is constructed around it. As the longleaf pines were harvested and the tortoises were hunted or displaced, the indigo snake disappeared. During the Great Depression, people excavated tortoises for food and would kill any snakes they discovered hiding inside. By 1978, the eastern indigo snake was listed as a threatened species. It was completely eradicated from Alabama and North Florida. So here's the reality. The laughable strategy wasn't about introducing a new snake. It was about restoring a native apex predator that humans had already eliminated. For decades, a coalition of conservation groups and state agencies had been meticulously breeding indigos in captivity. They were restoring portions of longleaf pine forest and protecting gopher tortoise populations. What appeared like an impulsive, reckless idea to the public was actually one of the most careful, gradual, and scientifically supported restoration projects ever undertaken. But that doesn't mean the wild theories are incorrect. What if this is the mongoose scenario? What if we're releasing a new apex predator into a system that is already completely devastated? What will the indigos consume after they eliminate the pythons, if they even can? What if they become the next plague? Scientists insist they've conducted the research, but here's the reality. That's what they said in Hawaii too. The emperor was returning. The stage was prepared for a battle of titans. But the real shock, the real aftermath, was happening somewhere else. While the world was busy mocking the snake versus snake strategy, something else was occurring in the swamp. Something nobody anticipated. Nature, it turns out, was already beginning to adapt. This was the other unexpected aftermath. Deep in the Big Cypress National Preserve, researchers were tracking a 13-foot, 52-pound male python they had named Loki. The snake was fitted with a GPS tracker as part of a breeding study. One December morning, they went to verify his location, expecting a routine check. What they discovered left them speechless. Loki's massive body was sprawled in the grass. His head had been completely severed and was concealed under a nearby bed of pine needles. This was a 52-pound apex predator. What in the Everglades could accomplish this? An alligator? A panther? A few days later, a trail camera positioned nearby revealed the unbelievable perpetrator. It was a native bobcat. A bobcat that biologists estimated weighed barely 25 pounds. This discovery stunned everyone. Wildlife experts called it unprecedented. A native bobcat had successfully stalked, killed, and consumed an adult Burmese python more than twice its weight. For 2 decades, these pythons had been the undisputed monsters, feared by everything. Now, suddenly, one of Florida's own had reversed the roles. Some experts speculate that a recent cold snap had slowed the python down, making it vulnerable. But that's where the new wild theories emerge. What if it wasn't a fluke? What if the native predators are learning? This wasn't an isolated incident. Across Florida, more evidence started appearing. Alligators, the original apex predators of the swamp, were spotted ambushing and consuming smaller pythons. Even the elusive and endangered Florida panther has been documented taking on these invaders. What if the predators are communicating, not in words but through behavior? What if one bobcat observed another, or learned from a failed hunt and is now passing that knowledge to its offspring? What if the home team is finally discovering the monster's vulnerabilities? One wildlife biologist famously called it a score for the home team. The Everglades were fighting back, but this adaptation is painfully slow. A single bobcat can't reverse 2 decades of destruction. For every python eliminated by a native predator, thousands more hatch, hidden and safe. The home team was on the scoreboard, but they were still losing the game, and that's what makes the other part of this story so critical. The laughable plan, the return of the emperor. For years, conservation teams had been releasing their captive-bred eastern indigo snakes into a protected area in North Florida, the Ecological Bluffs and Ravines Preserve. This is hundreds of miles north of the main python invasion, but it's the indigo's ancestral territory. But that's not the point. The real unexpected aftermath, the one nobody predicted, is twofold. First, that nature itself is adapting. The bobcats and alligators are learning. Second, that a conservation strategy built on patience, science, and trusting nature's own balance actually succeeded. For decades, the story of the Everglades was a story of human failure. We failed to contain the snakes. We failed to remove them. We searched for a high-tech miracle solution, and it exploded in our faces. But the real solution, the one that's finally providing a glimmer of hope, wasn't a robot or a drone. It was a native snake. It was the slow, difficult work of restoring the landscape and bringing back the king. The pythons remain a crisis. The lungworm remains a plague. But footage from Florida's swamps finally revealed an aftermath nobody expected. Resilience. Hope. But this is where the final wild theory leaves us. What happens next? What happens when the eastern indigo's territory, which is spreading south, finally collides with the python's territory, which is spreading north? And more importantly, what happens when the lungworm encounters the emperor? What if this new plague, which is also spreading north, infects the newly restored indigo snakes? Are we just restoring a native species only to feed it to an invisible monster? The real aftermath isn't an ending. It's the beginning of a new three-way war: the python, the parasite, and the emperor. Are we witnessing a recovery or just the next phase of the apocalypse? The story of the Florida Everglades continues to unfold before our eyes, and what we're witnessing is unlike anything we've seen before. This isn't just about snakes anymore. It's about survival, adaptation, and the unpredictable power of nature itself. From Hurricane Andrew's devastation to microscopic parasites spreading through the swamp, from failed technology to a legendary predator's return, the Everglades has become ground zero for one of the most complex ecological battles in modern history. The question isn't whether humans can control nature. We've already proven we can't. The question is whether nature can heal itself even after we've broken it so badly. As the eastern indigo snake reclaims its ancient kingdom, as bobcats learn to hunt monsters twice their size, and as an invisible plague spreads through the shadows, we're left watching a three-way war with no clear winner. The pythons changed the Everglades forever, but the aftermath, the one nobody predicted, is still being written, and it might just be the most fascinating chapter yet. What do you think will happen when these three forces finally collide? Will the Emperor save the Everglades, or are we watching the beginning of something even worse? Drop your theories in the comments below, and if you're fascinated by the hidden stories behind history's greatest ecological battles, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We're diving deep into the untold stories that changed our world, one documentary at a time. Don't miss what's coming next.